What's up guys, my name is Fari, and in today's video I'm going to be going through the number one skill that has allowed me to 10x the things that I've been able to do since I started my journey all the way up to where I am today. And I still see it as a super valuable skill simply because it has completely changed my life, and that is the ability of figuring things out as you build. And this concept has been the driving force of me understanding that whatever situation or whatever thing that I build needs to have that mindset first of I'm gonna just build, but first I'm gonna figure it out. So in this video I'm gonna be going through what it actually means and where it shows up for me, because in as much as you can understand what it actually means, it's the doing part where you can basically create the leverage, and then from there you can then allow it to compound, which is why it ultimately compounds. So jumping straight into this, we can see where it actively shows up for me, or why it actually matters, is because I'm doing this calculated. I'm not necessarily risking it in the sense of, I'm not being careless in just doing it, but not understanding why or what I'm doing, but understanding that I'm doing it, but I'm also not winging it, because I'm understanding that I'm committing to the outcome before knowing the path. And this is one of the things that I see across the board, where people want to know the path and they want to know that I need to take, or I need to go from point A to B, but I need to understand the full landscape of how to get from point A to B, when in reality understanding the outcome or driving towards the outcome is where you're then able to say, okay, I'm just gonna do it regardless of where the path takes me. Because from my experience, I've seen a lot of people become paralyzed simply because of trying to understand so much of what the path looks like, and instead of actually building the things that gets you to that specific outcome. And I'm a big believer on the outcome is the most important thing, in the sense that if you understand what your outcome or what you actively want to build towards, then everything else simply doesn't matter in the sense of how you actively get there. It's the outcome that's the most important thing, and then the vehicles that ultimately get you there are somewhat secondary. And from there, you understand that most people wait to feel ready, and then you ultimately take the path of, okay, I'm just gonna move no matter what, simply because action brings clarity. And this has been the one thing that has also allowed me to understand, what are the things that I need to do on a day-to-day in order to form the clarity that I need to go towards that specific outcome. And clarity only comes when you're taking action. You're not gonna understand or get to your specific outcome if you're not doing anything to change the specific situation that you're in. Even if you feel scared or you feel like you don't know what you're doing, I understand at least that if you're able to take one small step, even if it's just one small thing that builds that little bit of momentum, that you can then understand that, okay, I built this little bit of momentum, now it's going to start to snowball as time goes on. But that means that resourcefulness beats resources each and every single time, especially for me, because I've always been a big believer of you need to be as resourceful as you possibly can, because life is not always going to hand you resources, and you're not always going to understand or have the resources available that you need to get to the next level. That's where resourcefulness comes in, where you're then able to find means in order to get to your specific outcome, even if you don't have the resources necessary at that specific stage in time. And those resources can be connections, knowledge, it can be anything. But understanding that if you're resourceful enough, then you're then able to form those connections, relationships, partnerships that ultimately gets you to that next level that you want to get to, which ultimately drives the specific outcome that you're chasing. And understanding that you also need to believe that you'll find the answers before you even have it. And I think this is also just one of those mindset things, or just one of those things to understand as well, that you need to have this specific mind that I'm gonna figure it out no matter what, simply because you believe in your specific vision and in yourself as well. And for me, it's always been, okay, I'm just gonna do this and I'm gonna figure it out no matter what. I may not know the answers today, but if I make a little bit of progress tomorrow and the day after and the day after that, then I'm gonna ultimately, compound whatever I've learned in that span or in that duration in order to get to the specific outcome that I want to get towards. And I think this is one of the most important things, especially now with the rise of AI and all these different things. There's so many things to learn, and especially for me, as I'm trying to learn new things and adapting new things in terms of the things that I'm doing on a day-to-day to improve my life and the life of the people that are around me. It becomes increasingly important to be able to have that specific mindset of, I'm gonna figure it out no matter what. The task may be daunting, but I'm gonna figure it out, and that ultimately gets you to where you want to get to, which is your specific outcome. And then now where it shows up for me is, if we take an example for those that don't know, I did 154 days last year and I didn't have a roadmap. I just showed up each and every single day, and by showing up each and every single day, that clarity that I needed in terms of building up those connections, those relationships, and also understanding and learning as well, came as a result of just taking that action. That clarity that I needed in that specific moment in time was formed by just doing the videos and just showing up each and every single day, and also coming where it comes to learned systems while doing it live for clients as well. Because sometimes when you're all starting out in the beginning phase, you're not always gonna understand what you need to do. You learn by trial and error, and that's where you learn systems back in the day by doing it for clients live, because you're then in the battlefield and you're then forced to perform. And I think it's also good, I mean, some people probably are different when it comes to this, but understanding that if you're the type of person that performs well under pressure, where you have to perform, and even if you don't perform to the highest level, you still learn something that's equally as valuable as well. Because for me, I've done so many things and tried so many things. Some have failed, some have succeeded, but that has also led me, or was a result, because I just said, what, I'm just gonna do this and I'm gonna figure it out along the way, because that action breeds that clarity that gets you to the next level or the next stage where you want to get to. And every client problem was new, especially for me, and I just figured it out anyways, because you're not always gonna face the same things that There are gonna be variables and so many different things that come, especially now, like I said, with the rise of AI and all these different tools and things like that. There's so many things to learn, but you need to have that underlying principle of, I'm gonna figure it out anyways. And I think this is also somewhat of my personal belief when it comes to all the things that are happening in this world, that if you as a person understand that there are all these tools, these AI tools, you can do XYZ and all of these things, where does the leverage lie if execution gets commoditized? If the execution layer of everything ultimately is run somewhat through AI, what can you then do to create the leverage? And that's where I see that the leverage for me especially comes from just saying, I'm gonna figure it out, simply because no matter what the tool is, whatever it is, then you're then able to then figure it out. Because the purpose, which is simply just understanding what outcome you're driving towards or you're aiming towards, simply then just allows everything else to fall as a result, fall in line with that, which is basically the vehicles, the AI, whatever it is. All of that just then becomes a vehicle in order to get to where you want to get to, and never having a blueprint, but just building by doing. And I think this is important as well, because if you always have to have a blueprint for whatever it is that you're doing, you then, gonna spend so much time in the planning phase and less time in the execution phase, where you're not actively doing and gathering those data points and understanding, where am I failing, where am I succeeding. Then you're just going to spend so much time in the planning phase and not actively just doing the things that you need to do in order to move to the next level. And most of my depth moments taught me the most, where I've thrown myself in the deep end and I've just had to learn the things that I needed to learn in that moment in time in order to show up and also perform at the highest level that I possibly can in that moment. Because if you constantly throw yourself in the deep end, and this is true for me, where I've constantly thrown myself in the deep end, that's where I've had to perform the most, and that is where the most leverage has been created specifically for me, because I've had to then say, okay, I have these frameworks and I have these tools, so how am I going to figure it out from my learnings and perspective and experience as well? How am I going to use all of that in order to just figure out the solutions and things that I need to figure out in order to build the specific outcome? And I think that ultimately compounds, and that is why having the skill is equally as important. And the reason why it compounds is that every problem solved raises your floor permanently. You now start to understand that this was my floor a month ago, but now I've learned a lot more, and now I can raise my floor and understand that my floor will not drop down simply because I've already learned this and I've already figured this out. Simply because if I ever want to reach a new level, I just know that I can just figure it out again and again and again. I don't have to take the approach of, okay, I'm not going to do this because I don't have enough knowledge, I don't have this, I don't have that, because that doesn't get you into the right state of mind and also the execution mode that you need to be in order to get the things done and also get to the next level as well. And you can't unlearn confidence built from real execution as well. Especially for me, that I felt the most depth and power, if you will say, in terms of knowledge, when it has come down to me executing real builds, throwing myself in the deep end and understanding that confidence that I've figured something out is only gonna build that momentum for me to continue to do that. And that momentum ultimately snowballs and it compounds, because you're then able to figure things out enough times, and then people start calling you when things break. And I think that is the most important thing as well, being understood as the person, or being known as the person that people come to when things break, and being a chief problem solver. And this is where you basically are then able to build upon that as well, of being able to solve problems and just understand that you can figure things out as you go, and also not being a personality trait, but it being a practiced habit. And then you start now and then you figure it out as you go, and that is what brings you the most amount of leverage. And especially for me, this has been my guiding principle in terms of the things that I've needed to learn in any phase or any stage that I've been to. And I believe that it's one of the things that continues to be the strong moat in accordance to where I need to be in the upcoming years, months, or wherever the case is. But just building towards that and having that as a guiding principle of what it is that I'm going to be doing 2 months, 6 months, 10 years from now, just playing the long-term game, and also having the principles and mechanisms that allow me to constantly switch and move across the different stages. And yeah, if you guys enjoy this video, make sure to check out my X, LinkedIn, Instagram, and also my newsletter, where I go deep into specific builds or things that I'm thinking about, and just sharing the high level source, if you will, of the builds and systems and how to basically build stuff as well. So if you guys enjoy that, yeah, make sure to check the link in the description, and I will see you guys in the next video.